My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 51 years old, born and raised in Nebraska, and for most of my life people have called me the same thing, the man who never cries. At work, my coworkers joke that I'm made of stone. At family gatherings, my siblings brag about how I never break. Even my late wife used to say she had never seen a single tear fall from my eyes. Not at our wedding, not at our child's birth, not even at funerals. But the truth is, I wasn't born without emotions. I feel everything: pain, love, fear, regret with the same intensity as any other human being. I just learned early in life that showing tears was a luxury I didn't have. And for 30 long years, I kept the reason buried deep inside my chest like a locked box I swore never to open. But the night my 10-year-old son, Ethan, walked into my room after finishing his homework, sat on the edge of my bed and asked, "Dad, how come you never cry? Don't grown-ups get sad too?" That locked box inside me began to shake, the way old memories do when the past finally demands to be heard. At first I tried to laugh it off, ruffle his hair, give him one of those easy answers parents use to dodge conversations they're not ready for. But he didn't move. He didn't smile. He just stared at me with this softness, this innocence, this quiet seriousness no 10-year-old should ever have to wear. And something inside me broke, not dramatically, not loudly, but subtly, like the way a frozen lake cracks beneath your feet in the middle of winter. I realized that if I didn't tell him the truth now, he might grow up believing men should swallow their emotions, bury their wounds, walk through life pretending they were unbreakable. I couldn't let him inherit the same cage I had lived in for decades. So I took a deep breath, sat up straighter, and told him, "Ethan, let me tell you a story I've never told anyone. Not even your mom?" I started from the beginning, when I was just 13 years old, living in a small farmhouse with my parents and my older brother, Matthew, who was 2 years older than me, smarter than me, stronger than me, and in every way the kind of son a father brags about. My father adored him. Not just loved, adored. Dad would take him fishing, teach him how to fix engines, put his arm proudly around his shoulder whenever relatives visited, and me? I was the quiet one, the indoor kid, the boy who liked books more than baseball, the kid who tried too hard and always fell short. One winter morning, Matthew and I decided to walk to the frozen lake behind our house. It was something we'd done every year. We knew the ice. We knew the weather. We knew the danger. But that year, the temperature had been unpredictable, warmer than usual. And although the surface looked solid, parts of the lake hadn't fully frozen. I remember Matthew running ahead of me, laughing, sliding across the ice like he was flying. I remember telling him to slow down. And I remember the moment the ice beneath him cracked with a sound I will never forget. At first, it was just a small fracture, like a line drawn across glass. Then it spread. Then it broke. And then my brother, my hero, fell into the dark, freezing water. I don't remember making the decision. I don't remember thinking. I just dropped to my knees and crawled toward him, grabbing his arms, trying to pull him up. The cold was unbelievable. The ice cut into my palms. My fingers went numb, but I held on. I held on with everything I had. And he still slipped away. He was heavier, stronger, panicking, kicking, pulling me down with him. I screamed for help until my voice cracked, but the lake was too quiet, too isolated, too far from home. I held him until my strength gave out. I held him until his grip loosened. I held him until the last bubble of air escaped his lips. And then he sank, slowly, like a stone dropping into blackness, and I watched the water swallow the only person who ever believed I could be something. When I finally crawled back to the shore, shivering, bleeding, barely breathing, I ran home. When my parents arrived at the lake, they searched for him for hours until rescue teams came. They found his body the next day. And when my father saw me standing there empty-handed, frostbitten, shaking, he looked at me with a hatred I didn't know a father could have for his own son. "It should have been you," he said. "Why wasn't it you?" Those words hit harder than the icy wind. My mother tried to pull him back, tried to calm him, but it was too late. Those 6 words carved themselves into my bones. And that was the day I made a decision I didn't fully understand at the time. I would never cry again. because crying in my father's eyes was weakness. Crying made you the lesser son. Crying made you the burden. So I stopped. I shut myself down. I learned to swallow grief before it reached my throat. I learned to force my face still, even during heartbreak, even during joy. And when I grew older and left that house, I carried that emotional silence like luggage I didn't know how to put down. As I told Ethan this story, I watched his eyes widen, his small hands clutching the blanket on my bed. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused. He was hurting for me. And something in his expression gave me permission I didn't even realize I had been waiting for. I told him how my father and I barely spoke after that day, how the guilt never left him but was too heavy for him to admit, how he died with regret in his eyes but pride still locked behind his teeth. I told him how I met Ethan's mom in college, how she was the first person who made me laugh freely, the first person who saw past my silence. The first woman who told me that crying didn't make a man weak, it made him human. I told him how she held me the night my father died, how she whispered, "It wasn't your fault, Daniel. You were a child. You did everything, but I couldn't cry. Not then. Not even at her funeral years later when cancer took her before she turned 40. I told Ethan how I stood at the cemetery, hands in my pockets, watching the love of my life lowered into the ground while everyone else sobbed around me, and all I felt was that old, familiar numbness. Not because I didn't love her, not because I didn't hurt, but because 30 years of emotional silence doesn't break easily. And then, when I finally finished telling the story, Ethan didn't say anything. He just crawled into my arms, wrapped them around himself, and whispered, "Dad, you don't have to be strong all the time." Not for me. Those words, soft, tiny, innocent, unlocked the box inside me. For the first time in 30 years, my throat tightened. My chest burned. My eyes stung. And then, before I could stop it, a single tear rolled down my cheek. Ethan saw it, gasped softly, then wiped it with his small hand like it was something precious. "I love you, Dad," he whispered. I held him tighter than I had ever held anything in my life. And in that moment I realized something powerful. I had spent decades trying to be unbreakable, not realizing that the strongest thing a man can do is allow himself to be human. My tears didn't make me weak. They made me free. And when Ethan finally fell asleep beside me, his tiny hand still holding onto my shirt, I whispered into the quiet room, "Thank you, son, for giving me back the part of myself I thought was gone forever."